Can I confess something to you? I hate Myst. I don't understand why any human who isn't the Riddler would make those puzzles. But back in the 90s, you'd be like, can we get a puzzle game? And then mom would be like, we have puzzle games at home. But then the puzzle games at home. Why does this even exist? Fortunately, innovations have been made since 1994. Return of the Obra Dinn, Tunic, and Outer Wilds are all exemplars in a subgenre of puzzle games called investigation games. These games are usually story-driven. That is to say, they won't progress unless you, the player, figure out what the story even is. That might look like examining a scene to figure out how someone died, or scouring in-game documents to understand what the logic of this world even is. And solving a puzzle that unlocks more story, oh boy, does that dopamine ever feel good on the old prefrontal cortex. These games have compelling stories that urge us to unlock their mysteries. Between keeping motivation high and carefully balancing difficulty, a good investigation game makes you feel like a genius. And that can be hard to find. So, for your leisure, I found 5 investigation games that cartwheel down the tightrope between game balance and narrative design, all in order to make you feel like a genius. You ever have a hard time getting on the same page as someone? Communicating is so core to existing that we barely ever think about it, but frankly, it's impossible.
Fire up!
Okay, I'm being a little hyperbolic. Language isn't impossible, but it feels that way sometimes. But in reality, language is puzzles. Duolingo was a huge success because it was built on the philosophy that language is just two people trading little puzzles back and forth. Chance of Sonar is taking that idea and running wild with it. You play as a blank slate that doesn't know any words, not even copyright infringement. He's just a guy in a robe that in no way resembles the little guys from Journey. I don't know where you're getting that idea from. And he's stuck behind a locked door. Fortunately, this handy lever here is labeled, and it's easy enough to deduce that this glyph means open. Congratulations, you learned your first word. Though it's not long before you meet another person, and they start throwing all kinds of confusing stuff at you, like greetings and requests and instructions. But eventually, you're able to pick out what they might be saying, and you make your way through together. Every once in a while, your little guy stops and opens his journal. He sketches out 3 pictures, and you have the chance to match the glyph to the picture. Sonar uses a rule of threes puzzle style, not unlike the one in Obra Dinn. Get 3 things right, and the game lets you know. You can even make notes saying what you think the glyphs mean before you lock them in. And thankfully, the game fills in all the known and guessed words when you see them in the world, so you don't need to memorize anything. As you start to uncover more language, a culture begins to emerge. We are in a small town at the foot of a giant tower. The folks who live here are highly religious and want to make a pilgrimage to the top of the tower, where they think God is hanging out. However, these pilgrims can't proceed. They're being stopped by some guards here at the foot of the stairs, but they don't know why. The guards speak an entirely different language. Each floor is inhabited by a different people speaking their own language, and the floor is characterized by a color scheme, environment, and character designs that reflect the culture, and that really brings the whole tower alive, and it makes it feel like a lived-in space. All that is contrasted by the minimalist cel-shaded 3D art style. This Mobius-style art direction is slowly getting more popular, and I'm thrilled to see it used here. Put the stuff everywhere, please. I want to live in it. It makes me excited to keep exploring the world. Between the rule of threes puzzles and the semi-open world gameplay, I never felt like the game was too easy or too hard. Sure, I could brute force the puzzles, but doing that was just annoying enough that I naturally avoided it for as long as possible. Why am I wasting time clicking here when I could be finding cool stuff like this? Or this? I'm only going to show you the first 2 floors because I loved exploring the tower with fresh eyes and I want to preserve that for you. But it's really hard because there's so much cool stuff I want to show you. It's all very well matched to the soundtrack, which feels inspired by Austin Wintory. It all adds to the emotional depth of the game. And boy, does this game not lack for emotional depth. As your path takes you up the tower through each culture, you'll see how the way they talk reveals their worldview, their values, their fears. Where one culture says God, another culture will replace that word with duty. This contributes to our understanding of these different cultures and when and why they might be having a hard time talking to each other. Thankfully, though, they have you, and you'll begin acting as a translator, reuniting the tower and bringing these people together. Unless, of course, you'd rather stop and play this crazy game of Flappy Bird. Look at this Flappy Bird game! It looks so cool! Chants of Sonar speaks to something core in me. An optimism and a belief that if we could all just take the time to understand each other, like really understand each other, the insurmountable barriers between us might start to look like more easily vaultable fences. When our values seem conflicting or even irreconcilable, they're often just slightly different perspectives on the same universal truths. In a world that seems determined to normalize hatred of the other, it was a breath of fresh air. It made me feel a little less scared, a little more patient, and honestly, a little stronger in the face of evil. Time loops and investigation games are a match made in heaven. Think about it. Each time you traverse the time loop, you move through the world in a unique path, encountering some events but missing others. When the loop is complete, you might get only a piece of the full picture. So every loop gives you a new piece of a larger puzzle that you, as the investigation genius that you are, will eventually assemble together into a clear picture. Test, Test, Test is a delightful example of how to pull that off in a small, contained story you can beat in 1 to 2 hours. You play as an office drone who wakes up on his apartment floor, late for work, with just enough phone battery left to get an angry call from your boss. He wants you to deliver the test reports in 15 minutes, so you're really starting out behind the 8 ball here. You now have 15 real-world minutes. Unless you use the fast-forward function, thank goodness there's a fast-forward function, where you'll need to take the train, ride the elevator, and use whatever time is left to try to find these 3 reports, which are not in their folder. Who was in charge of putting these reports together? It was me, wasn't it? Damn it. Mojikin, the Indonesian studio behind this one, is known for touching, artistic, narrative games about love and loss. Test, Test, Test is a sharp right turn, because things here quickly swerve into horror, sci-fi, and surrealism. This genre shift pairs nicely with the nature of the mystery, which is overflowing with ARG-inspired puzzles. Play this one with a browser available and a notebook in hand. You'll be deciphering codes and going back and forth between the colorful pixel art of the game and spooky glitched out web pages. Despite being a pretty minimalist game, I was really impressed with how it used every tool in its toolbox to hide secrets. I always felt challenged, but I never really got stuck. Okay, I got stuck like 1.5-ish times, but both times it was more of a UI misunderstanding than not knowing how to solve the puzzle. Like, for example, it's worth noting that this end test option on the menu screen is not the same thing as start a new loop. It takes you to the beginning of the game, not the beginning of a loop. Those are different. I didn't understand that. Don't be like Auntie Katie, children. And I really liked the ending as well. I won't spoil anything, but the ending is darkly comedic and will have you chuckling to yourself going,
It's funny because it's true.
What struck me most about Test, Test, Test was how good it looks. The neon color palettes here are really well constructed, and maybe just want to sit and look out the elevator's glass window on the neon city and wonder, why is it pink out there? Is that like an aesthetic choice, or is the world burning? And the soundtrack is so good for such a short title. Having this main track playing while I crouched over my decoder spreadsheet created an ideal puzzle-solving atmosphere. For the low price of $0, Test, Test, Test is absolutely worth checking out. Great puzzles, flawless aesthetic, and a compelling mystery that loves to put its horror just in your peripheral vision until it's too late. Long sea voyages held promise of distant lands, adventure, myths, legends, and secrets. It made a fertile ground for imaginations, but also our greediest instincts. The Case of the Golden Idol confronts the tension between adventure and greed and explores how deep the rabbit hole really goes. The game is structured like a storybook. Each chapter is made up of a scene that you click around and explore. As you explore, you pick up names, nouns, and actions. After you've fully explored the scene, switch over from the Exploration tab to the Thinking tab, and you'll be confronted with a MadLib. Okay, it's not quite a MadLib, there's a right answer here. Use what you learned from the scene to correctly fill it out, and you'll beat the level. Beating a level is so much more than a good job screen, though. Golden Idol turns you into the narrator. There is a sense that the story will remain untold, its lessons unlearned, its secrets obscured if you don't piece things together. Oftentimes we talk about ludonarrative dissonance or consonance in a game. How well does the story match the mechanics of the gameplay? But here, deducing the story is the whole game. The Venn diagram of gameplay and narrative is a perfect circle. Finishing a puzzle was extremely satisfying, and it was the perfect level of challenging for me. If you fill out a puzzle incorrectly but have less than 2 mistakes, the game will let you know that you're close. This fostered a loop of intelligent guesswork, reinforced by additional investigation that I really enjoyed. However, my favorite part of the game is actually something a genius like you might never see. Golden Idol has the best in-game hint system that I've ever seen. Before you can access the hint, you get this very nice message from the devs encouraging you to try again. Make sure you haven't made any obvious mistakes. I love this message because it totally worked. I came back here 3 separate times before I finally gave up. Then there's a little mini game where you're given a dozen different images that you need to identify. It's kind of like a reading comprehension test of the story so far. Once you've completed that, you get to pick hints, each in a labeled metal canister. So if you know where you're stuck, you can tailor your hint. The hint itself is in the form of a letter addressed directly to you, the player. I don't want to show you the hint I used, but I gotta tell you this part. The letter writer keeps addressing you, the player, as, quote, my friend, and I found that to be very endearing. Hints are an unsung art form in puzzle games. They're the last line of defense before you throw up your hands and quit the game entirely. So a thoughtful hint system that invites players to stick around is so important. And this is such a good hint system. It is aesthetically consistent within the world of the game, presented in an encouraging way with tips on how to avoid it, made me feel I'd earned a hint with a little puzzle, and it provides enough player control to tailor help to a specific situation. The music in case of the Golden Idol is very Obra Dinn inspired, and I would love the soundtrack on a vinyl record that I would retitle Songs to Ponder To. The art style is... Listen, I need you to know I mean this as a compliment. It's hilarious. Look at her. She's ridiculous. I love her. I think the silly pixel art style lends itself very well to the adventure story unfolding. The case of the Golden Idol gets pretty dark at points, but Mary here really kept my spirits up. I love Case of the Golden Idol so much that after completing it, I immediately picked up both DLCs, an extra 6 chapters serving as prequels to the main story. I kind of like their stories more, which is saying a lot. The main game set a high bar. Blood on the Thames oozes mystery. It takes a swing at a genre I haven't yet seen explored in an investigation game. Lovecraft. Like many Lovecraftian stories, it takes place in 1800s London, where inconceivable horrors and unthinkably powerful gods loom just outside our understanding. Though, unlike many Lovecraft stories, it's not underscored with casual, and not so casual, racism. When I spoke to the dev about Blood on the Thames, I was struck by their approach to telling a story like this one. Lovecraft's typical hero, an upper-class white dude sitting comfortably in London society, is driven mad on learning that he, in fact, is not the center of the universe. Blood on the Thames muses. What if you aren't white or a dude? What if your station in society already reminds you every single day that you are not, in fact, the center of the universe? Would you go as mad? This kind of question gives you a taste of where this game's head is at. You play Captain Ishmael, and the game starts when the rapscallion Victor Franklin storms your ship demanding a mysterious package. If you're getting a sense of déjà vu with these names, it might be because all the characters in Blood on the Thames are named after classic characters in 1800s literature. Captain Ishmael then finds himself traversing London streets, searching for Victor. You'll solve puzzles in order to learn about him and his secrets. And eventually you'll find yourself confronting his lies with the clues and evidence you found. When the confrontation begins, you're given 20 minutes to pick apart the lies Victor throws at you. He'll say a few things, and you'll pick out the lie, given the information you've gathered. Not unlike Ace Attorney. However, if the evidence doesn't disprove the statement, the clock runs down faster. I really like this touch. It's a fresh take on penalizing random guessing in an investigation game. You may have already noticed from the footage I've shown so far that Blood on the Thames is mixing a few different art styles. Much of the story is told through these photographs, which make me wistful for those classic FMV games like Gabriel Knight and Phantasmagoria. However, the actual gameplay occurs in these 3D settings that use a really unique sketched texture that just screams Mundan to me. Talking to the devs revealed that Mundan wasn't actually a direct inspiration, but even so, I'm thrilled to find more games looking like this. I'm nuts for this look, and I had been craving more of it, so seeing it here was really exciting. And finally, sometimes the game will dissolve into this command line style interface that the characters seem totally unaware of. If you want to learn more about it, there's actually an ARG associated with this game that looks very cool. And if you too want to be cool, you can find the demo for this to-be-released title lurking somewhere in the ARG. I'll link it in the description. Otherwise, you can just grab the demo, and I'll link that below as well. Immortality is a tricky one for me to write about here because it kind of changed my life. Immortality is an FMV, or full motion video game. Essentially, this means that it's made up of live-action filmed segments. This is the third FMV from Half Mermaid Games, and the other two, Telling Lies and Her Story, were both critically acclaimed. Immortality, though. I could tell you it's been nominated for 26 awards, and won more than a few of them, but that wouldn't tell you what I need you to know about Immortality. When you start it up the first time, Immortality presents itself not as a game, but software. An interactive memorial to Marissa Marcel, an actress that starred in 3 never-released films and then disappeared. This software contains footage from these 3 films. Rehearsals, table reads, even late-night show guest spots. The controls are designed to simulate an old moviola, a film editing machine, allowing you to scrub through the footage. You find new clips by finding an object in the scene, selecting it, and the game reveals a new scene with the same element, creating your own match cut with your moviola. Each scene is a new piece in the puzzle. You'll see the 60s exploitation Italian drama Ambrosio, but you'll also see the tension between Marissa and the Hitchcock-inspired director. Through these clips, you get to know who she was and what she wanted from life. Man Engage brings Marissa to life. All the actors are actually really excellent, and Charlotta Molin is especially transformative. The performances bring the story out of the screen and invite it into your brain to hang out for a while, where they can really mess with you. I thought watching a table read would be boring. It was anything but that. I found myself watching each character closely, trying to decode their micro-expressions to figure out how they felt about one another and their situation. I won't be giving anything away, but I will say it's entirely up to the player to find the twist. Just watching everything straight through won't reveal it. And when you do find it, the real immortality starts here. It's hard to explain more than that without spoilers, but this game holds a cornucopia of ideas. It explores creativity, the apprentice master paradigm, fame, why we make art, women in entertainment, and, of course, immortality. This game has more themes than my computer in 1998. I said this game changed my life, and I wasn't exaggerating. After I devoured this mystery, I wrote my very first video essay on it. And while I think I've written better stuff since then, you never forget your first. Make no mistake, Immortality is a horror game. There's some genuine scares in there waiting for you, but it's so much more than just horror or just mystery. It's the kind of piece that inspires you to go make the thing you've always thought about making, but just haven't made the leap yet. I am better, inside and out, for having played Immortality. Learning the fate of Marissa Marcel made me braver and helped me find a light in my soul I thought was long extinguished. So there you have it. 5 investigation games that will definitely, no doubt, make you feel like a genius. Now, say it with me, folks. Genre is an ever-shifting construct that is only slightly useful to group similar games together. So let's be real. The difference between an investigation game and a puzzle game or a mystery game isn't really worth losing sleep over. Here, I've limited investigation to describe games that tell a story through the game mechanics, require deductive reasoning, and leverage some kind of note-taking, either physically taking your own notes or an in-game journal mechanic that requires player input to progress. And what's great is developers are finding ways to make investigation games that aren't just murder mysteries. Sorry, Phoenix. No, I love your games. You're great too, but I love the diversity of stories you can tell with these mechanics. Learning is an investigation game, and games like Chants of Sonar and Outer Wilds make that blindingly obvious to me. I find these games so satisfying, maybe because I start the game feeling like a lost little lamb, and by the end I feel like an omnipotent, all-seeing presence. I know every crevasse, every character, every secret, and that growth from clueless to clue master is largely the result of my own deductive reasoning. It makes me feel not only like a genius, but also like I was a part of the story in some substantial way. And in many of the games we talked about today, the developers leverage that increased sense of immersion to get you to engage with these themes. Solving the mystery of what happened to Marissa Marcel is so much more than picking the red or blue page in Myst. It's transformative. Investigation games in 2024 are uniting narrative design and game design in ways I don't think we've seen before. So, if you haven't checked out this genre yet, maybe it's time to take a look. After all, you'll get to feel like a genius. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, consider subscribing or liking or leaving a comment. It's always really awkward to ask, but I really do love reading comments, and number go up does mean I'll make more stuff like this. I also have some other videos you might be interested in as well. For example, 5 cozy games that are actually worth your time is indeed a video that is worth your time. But until next time, here's some final food for thought.
Go down to Marie Callender's. Get me a big bowl. Pie, some ice cream on it. Good. Put some on your head. Your tongue would slap your brains out trying to get to it. Interested? Sure.